What happens when everyone else at the will reading receives millions, and the lawyer slides you a thin envelope with nothing inside but a phone number? My name is Neria Whitmore. I am 25 years old. My stepmother, Diane, received several $1,000,000 and the right to remain in the house. My stepsister, Clara, received a large direct transfer. No conditions, no complications. When my name was spoken, the lawyer did not read out an amount. He reached into his briefcase and placed a thin, slightly yellowed envelope on the table in front of me. Diane let out a quiet laugh before I even touched it. "It is probably her unpaid medical bills," she said, and lifted her glass slightly. A few people smiled. Not enough to draw attention, but enough that I could feel it. I picked up the envelope. It was almost weightless. There was nothing written on the outside, no instructions, no explanation. Clara was already scrolling her phone. The moment was already over for her. I held the envelope and understood that no one was waiting for me to open it. What was inside? It was not what any of them expected, and neither was what happened next. Before I tell you what was in that envelope, I need to tell you what I had been doing for the years before that reading. After my father died, Diane stayed, and over time everything in the house began to move around her. She handled the accounts, spoke to the staff, made decisions about repairs and schedules. She introduced herself as the one keeping things running. No one questioned it. It happened gradually enough to feel normal. I took care of what was left. I managed my grandmother's medications, kept track of her appointments, stayed with her when the nights stretched longer than they should. Those things were necessary, but they were not visible in the same way that money or ownership was. Diane said it plainly to me once without raising her voice. "You are good at taking care of things that do not require decisions. That is not the same as being responsible for them." She said it like she was explaining something simple, something I should already understand. Clara never said it directly, but she followed the same logic. She had grown up watching her mother define what mattered, and she accepted it without question. I did not argue with either of them. It was easier not to. My grandmother noticed more than she ever said out loud. One evening while I was checking her evening pills, she said something that did not fit the moment. "Not everything important will be written where they can read it." I looked up, expecting her to explain. She just watched me for a second and nodded slightly as if she had already said enough. Another time she mentioned a name. "Mr. Halbrook, if anything ever becomes complicated," she said, "he knows what to do." Her tone was steady, not uncertain, and those words stayed with me longer than I understood at the time. I did not open the envelope in the hallway. I walked to one of the smaller storage rooms where the house was quiet, and the kind of quiet that did not feel watched. I closed the door, stood for a moment, then slid my finger under the edge and pulled it open. Inside, there was a single card, a phone number in neat, familiar handwriting. Under it, one sentence: "Call only when they show you who they are." And underneath, that written smaller as if added later: "Trust him, not them." I read it more than once, expecting something else to appear the second time. It did not change. I thought about putting the card back. It would have been easy to treat it as something symbolic, something my grandmother had written without expecting me to act on it. That would have fit everything else I had already accepted. Instead, I took out my phone and entered the number, slowly checking each digit before pressing call. The call connected after one ring. I had not expected that. I thought it might go to voicemail. I thought I would have time to reconsider. There was no pause. "This is Halbrook." The voice was steady and controlled, like he was picking up a scheduled call. I said my name. There was a brief silence on the other end, not uncertain, measured. "Neria Whitmore," he said, as if confirming something already in front of him. "I have been expecting your call." He did not sound surprised. If anything, he sounded relieved. He spoke carefully, and I listened to every word. Approximately 6 months before her passing, your grandmother transferred the majority of her assets into an irrevocable trust. That includes financial holdings, business interests, and the controlling interest in this property. The terms of that trust are not reflected in the public reading. I did not interrupt. Something in the way he said structure made me focus more carefully. You are named as the primary beneficiary, he said. At present, I am acting as trustee, which means I am responsible for managing those assets until the transition is complete. The process requires documentation and verification and your formal acceptance of the role. And then he said something I needed to hear. What changes today is your awareness of what already exists. He told me his team was already on their way to the house. He told me there might be resistance. That was why my grandmother had structured it this way. I looked down at the card still in my hand. At the handwriting, I had recognized immediately, but had not fully understood until that moment. I did not know any of this, I said. That was intentional, he replied. Your grandmother was very specific about timing. I ended the call without rushing. Still standing in the same room, but no longer feeling like I was waiting for something to happen. When I stepped back into the hallway, Diane was near the window, already speaking about renovations, already discussing changes as though they were decisions she had every right to make. Clara was at the table, again scrolling. Diane noticed me almost immediately. If you are going to stand there, at least do something useful, she said. Her voice calm and dismissive. Bring the glasses in from the kitchen. I did not move. For a second she assumed I had not heard her. Neria, she said more directly. No, I said. The word did not come out louder than usual, but it carried differently. The room quieted in a way that felt unplanned. Like something small had interrupted a pattern everyone expected to continue. Diane turned fully toward me, her expression tightening just slightly. That was not a suggestion, she said. I know, I replied. Before she could say anything else, the front door opened. Mr. Halbrook entered with 2 others, both carrying folders and document cases. He acknowledged Diane with a brief nod, then placed a set of documents on the table without asking for permission. I believe we need to clarify the structure that was only partially addressed earlier, he said. Diane straightened. The will has already been read, she replied. There is nothing unclear about it. That is correct, Halbrook said evenly. The will reflects a portion of the estate. It does not reflect the trust your mother established approximately 6 months prior. He opened the folder and turned it toward the table. He explained the transfer of assets, the separation between distribution and control. The legal authority assigned through the trust structure. Clara had stopped looking at her phone. Diane listened, then stepped forward, her voice sharpening. I have full residential rights to this property. That was made very clear, and those rights remain intact, Halbrook replied. However, they do not extend to decision-making authority regarding the property or associated holdings. That authority is governed by the trust. Diane let out a short breath, the first crack in her composure. I have been running this house for years, she said. Everything here works because of me, and that is acknowledged, Halbrook replied. But management and ownership are not the same thing. Diane opened her mouth again, then stopped, as if she had reached the edge of an argument that no longer held. For the first time, she looked around the room instead of at him, like she was checking if anyone would support her. No one did. By the end of that day, nothing in the house looked different, but the way it functioned had already changed. Diane still had the right to stay, and no one took that from her. She moved through the rooms the same way she always had. But now she paused before making changes, waiting for confirmation that no longer came from her. Clara kept what she had been given, but it did not carry the same weight without control behind it. She stayed quieter than usual, as if she was trying to understand something she had never needed to think about before. I did not ask for anything from either of them. I did not need to. That was the part I understood most clearly by the end. Control does not come from taking something away from someone else. It comes from knowing what already belongs to you and choosing how to hold it. Later that evening, when the house finally settled, I walked into the dining room and sat in the chair at the head of the table. No one stopped me. No one questioned it. And that was the first time that silence felt different. Not empty. Not waiting, just settled. My grandmother had spent years watching everything without reacting too quickly. She had made these decisions months before anyone else knew they existed. She had not chosen randomly. She had watched what I did when no one was measuring it. She had watched me manage the medications and the appointments and the quiet nights, and she had decided that was not a secondary role. That was the foundation. Drop your city in the comments and tell me which moment made you stop. Was it when Diane laughed before I even opened the envelope? Was it when the card said call only when they show you who they are? Or was it when I sat at the head of that table and no one said a word? I read every single comment. If this story gave you something today, please hit the like button right now. Subscribe to Jennifer's Story for new episodes every week. And the next story already on your screen right now is about a woman who sat quietly through her own family's betrayal for years while building something none of them ever knew existed. Stay right there, you need to hear it.